You are tuned to Anywhere the Needle Drops. Welcome, world. Welcome to the show. We have an exciting one for you here today. David Lowery. Cracker, camper van Beethoven. David Lowery, the man who has testified before Congress, fighting for artist rights, academic, all-around talented, wonderful musician. David Lowery is here today on Anywhere the Needle Drops. Welcome, world. It's an exciting show. Very excited about this one. But before we get to David Lowery, maybe we've got some new folks here on the show checking this out. Maybe you came for David and it's your first time here. If so, welcome. What we do here is we talk all things cool, music and culture in the Michiana region and beyond. And we brought David in for this one because he and Cracker are coming to town for their annual show at the Acorn Theater. Going to be an exciting time there. So yeah, that's what we do here. If you're new to the show, we have a cool thing happening here in Michiana, this little part of southern Michigan and northern Indiana, and lots of fun stuff happening here. So if you're new to the show, make sure you check out a lot of our back episodes and see some of the wonderful artists that we have right here in Michiana. Do not sleep on them. There are so many great ones here. Good stuff to check out. But before we get to all of that, how are you doing, world? What's been going on? Let's see. This past weekend, we had the No Kings protests all over the country, and we had one right here in Niles, which was great to see. I ended up going. I was planning on going. I have to say, I'll admit right now, woke up that morning before the protest, feeling a lot of anxiety, and really had to talk myself into getting down there. You know, I don't know what it was, if it was the protest itself, if it was fear of bad actors causing trouble, or, you know, other things in my life, or probably more accurately just a combination of all those things. But regardless, I got myself up and I drugged myself to downtown Niles, to the corner of 2nd and Main, where I was delighted to see hundreds of people arrive to speak out, to defend their democracy, as the sign that I carried said. Not a sign I designed because I went unprepared, but luckily someone had an extra sign they gave me. But as that sign said, democracy dies in silence. And so it was great, after what had seemed like an extended period of people being silent, people being a little maybe afraid or just unsure what to do in this new phase we found ourselves here in the United States. It was great to see hundreds of people out there motivated and acting, and just there was camaraderie. It was great. It felt great. I'm so glad I went. It really lifted my spirits and gave me hope for the future. And it wasn't just Niles. You know, St. Joe had their own packed protest going on at the same time. South Bend, right across the border, same thing. People showed up, and that's what we have to keep doing. Keep that energy going. Keep on showing up. And as we like to say here on this show, fuck fascism. Keep on fighting the fight, folks. That's all we can do. Keep on fighting the fight, and remember, you are not alone. We are not alone in this. We can win this. We got to keep on doing it, though. So, all right, let's turn to David Lowery, an exciting show. Not the first time Cracker has been represented on this show, but a number of years back, it was Johnny from the band, Johnny Hickman. He and I chatted at one of their Acorn shows a number of years back, and I very, very briefly met David, and never really had any idea that I would actually get him on the show. And it was such a great time. He was such a fantastic chat. We dug deep and went into it, you know. I asked him the same questions I asked every other artist, and we got into it. So it was a fun time. David is out there promoting right now his latest release that came out a couple weeks ago, Fathers, Sons, and Brothers, which is this great multi-disc autobiographical music collection. Some stuff on it has been out before in other releases, but it's this brand new release that comes all together with some new songs and new packaging and this gorgeous physical package that you can get in red, white, and blue, with David basically telling the stories of his life. And it's such a great listen. Definitely one of my favorite releases of this year so far. So I highly recommend you check that out. Links are in the show notes, so you can go and buy that on vinyl, CD, or digital. Definitely recommend checking out the physical form, though, because it's really cool. One of those things that you crack it open and you sit back and you're reading through liner notes and looking at photos while you're listening to the stories being told musically. And speaking of the stories, we get into this a little bit, but David does also have a Substack that's adding even more detail to the tales from the album. So there's a link in the show notes for that, so be sure to check that out. And then, of course, this Saturday, June 21st, David and Cracker will be playing out at the Acorn Theater in Three Oaks. It's going to be a grand old rock show. Good times always with those guys, and of course our friends at the Acorn, always putting on good shows out there. So make sure you get yourself some tickets to that and check that out. Buy yourself that new album, get yourself out to the Acorn and see Cracker. And like I said, keep on fighting the good fight, people. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Thank you for your time. Here's to life.
La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La la, la 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 la. Went out the door into the morning darkness, gravel underfoot. Heard the screen door gently close. I slid across the seat. The steering wheel was cold, tiny icicles on the glass, in the corner of the windows. The desert air was dry, they were melted in an instant. I pulled onto the highway and I began to cry. I was leaving her behind. It was really for the best. I had something deep inside, boundless anger without reason. Yeah, we all got someone we left behind, 'cause we just weren't right in our hearts and our minds. Yeah, we all got someone we were lucky to find in the first place. Yeah, we all got someone we never treated right. We were selfish and drinking, staying out all night. Yeah, we all got someone we were lucky to find in the first place. And when she awakes, I hope that she's not sad. I loved her from the first time I laid my eyes upon her. Got a little house, drove a truck, played in a band, got some Mexican chickens, and we raised them on our land. Talked of having little girls, they'd have their mother's little curls. It was more than a dream. Yeah, one day they'd be real. I played out on the road. At first she came along, sang the harmonies, mixed the sound, sold the albums and the singles. I hung out in the bar, drinking till the closing time. I was foolish, I was selfish. I'd find her sleeping in the car. Yeah, we all got someone we left behind, 'cause we just weren't right in our hearts and our minds. Yeah, we all got someone we were lucky to find in the first place. Yeah, we all got someone we never treated right. We were selfish and drinking, staying up all night. Yeah, we all got someone we were lucky to find in the first place. She went back to our house to feed and raise the animals. We slowly grew apart, and I was growing meaner. I drank when I got up, 'cause the motel room was hot, or something stupid I had done. I was lonely for my girl. There was always someone else, and then there was another. I could barely stand myself. I was stoned all the time. When I finally came back home, she said something changed inside you. I smashed a glass against the wall. I went out walking in the desert. But when I come on back, she was sleeping peacefully. I knew that she was better off without me. The little girls were there. I saw the faces in her hair. But now it was clear I would never be their father. Put on my coat and hat, slid the deadbolt in the hasp, took one last look back at her. I stepped across the threshold.
There's so many things that we could talk about, but let's right off the bat just get into the fact that especially for my audience right here, you are coming along with Cracker to play the Acorn in Three Oaks just in a few weeks on June 21st. So tell me a little bit about what's coming with that show. You guys play the Acorn, about once a year, so it's kind of a regular stop for you guys now, right?
Seems like we play it pretty much around this time that week in June every year, it seems like, or we have for a while. It's been a great place for us to play. We like playing there, and I don't know, so it's just sort of become a little summer tradition to play out at Three Oaks every summer, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. It's really great what they're doing out there in a region like ours where we're a little more spread out but to have a venue like that that brings in quality acts like yourselves, it's something great to count on. Especially, I grew up a '90s kid, so I mean, I came up listening to Cracker, of course, on the radio, and then as I matured, kind of getting a more of a deeper read on your music, and also just appreciating all you do for the music world and everything like that. So to get you guys into Three Oaks, huge props always to the Acorn. We have a lot of guests come through this show that are on that stage, so we're always big fans of them. So
Great.
yeah. So and then you have got a new solo release coming up, and this is pretty exciting. I was digging into that a little bit earlier today. Tell me a little bit about what's coming out here.
It's a three LP, two CD set. It's 28 songs. It's almost 2 hours long. It sort of serves in lieu of an autobiography. Just did a bunch of took a little bunch of sort of autobiographical vignettes or things about people in my families, or maybe people who were sort of obscure members of the band or the crew who played some important role in my life. And I just kind of put it all together into this box set. Some of it has been released before on like a limited run CD, but a lot of what's on this thing that comes out Friday, it's called Father, Sons, and Brothers, by the way, is new, or at least new recordings. And so, yeah, it's kind of what I mean, there's Cracker shows because there's Cracker shows every summer, but it's kind of what I'm sort of out there sort of pushing right now. So that's where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listening to the release today, it is so very autobiographical. It's like you don't need to write a book. You have written that story in
Yeah.
the form of music, yeah, we have some new tracks coming on as well with the ones that were already released, some re-recordings, even some references back to some of the old days. So it's a great listen. Anyone that wants to know more about you and your history, especially with what we don't get into here. I mean, that's such a fantastic place to dig into. So
Thank you.
I love it. But so speaking of biography, every act we have on here, big or small, we always have to go back to the early days. So how did you find your way to music? Just both as a lover and as a creator of music.
I don't know. My family always they were always playing music. Nobody played an instrument in my family except my sister did briefly. She kind of got me into. She was playing banjo for a little bit, and she got me to play guitar to kind of back her up. But nobody really in my family was playing music, but big music fans in my family. My parents were all about like their home console stereo and new albums and.
Oh yeah, what was playing on that on the console stereo?
Well, my mom was from the UK and my dad was from Arkansas. So they listened to a lot of country because in my mom's generation, who grew up in World War II, she listened to American Armed Services radio. So she listened to early country music, basically. So it was a lot of country, a lot of bluegrass, a lot of early rock and roll, a lot of early R&B and stuff like that. I mean, it kind of was they changed with the times and listened to all different kinds of stuff through the years. But yeah, they were pretty big music fans. I remember too, like when I was in college too, like and first sort of playing with my band Camper Van Beethoven and stuff like that, like sort of digging into their library of albums that they had and just like finding all this cool, weird stuff, like an instrumental pedal steel surf album by like I think Pete Drake was the guy's name, like all this just like cool weird stuff that they had in their library there and stuff. So it was very helpful to me. So yeah, I played music a little bit when I was in college. I played in bands, and eventually one of them got kind of popular. That band was Camper Van Beethoven. And that band still around to this day. Actually, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We've been playing some shows across the country. with Camper Van Beethoven, and then eventually that evolved into Cracker, and then I've made, I don't know, 10 or more studio albums with Cracker through the years. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, such a prolific career between, those two bands that you mentioned there and your solo work. I had the count well into the 20s as far as the albums between all those different places. So it's pretty phenomenal career. I mean, and here you are, you've been at this for what's that put you at? I mean, 4 decades of making music. Did you ever imagine in those early days that this was where you're going to be at this point?
No, honestly. I mean, I remember thinking like at some point we were playing with Camper, it's like, if we do this right, I could probably make a living off of playing music till I'm 40. You know what I mean? That was sort of like, yeah, I could probably do it if we do it right, we'll be 40. So now it's almost 25 years past that 40-year mark. But and here we are. So no, I never imagined it would carry me this far. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So going back to the parents' vinyl collection a minute though, was there ever a moment of any kind of pushback or rejection on that? We have a tendency to kind of turn away from the things we were raised on and try to forge our own path. Obviously, some of that music you can hear in what you make today, but was there a moment of shifting away from that intentionally in those days?
I think it was more when maybe I was a very young teenager or something like that, maybe 14 or 15, discovered all kinds of good, like, just weird music, out of the UK or something like that, and that would seem to be different than the music that my parents liked, and it seemed to be pretty different to them. But like I said, by the time I was in college, I sort of got like fascinated by what my parents had been listening to, because partly I just kind of gone through the punk thing, and then sort of like looking back at like the stuff that happened in the 50s and the 60s and all of that stuff. I don't know if I really had the rebellious period, like where I got to listen to something different than my parents, right? My parents were kind of cool, even though, like, my dad was a military guy, my mom was, she was mostly just a housewife most of our life and stuff like that. But they were like pretty cool. They used to let our band practice in the house, I let all my bands practice at home.
Yeah, definitely. Was there ever any pushback on the idea of music as a career from them, given, military background or just parents caring about, their kids succeeding in life?
I think my dad told me at one point was I had till I was like 28 or something to join the Air Force if it didn't work out. So it's like, just go for it. Although that's the only time he ever said anything like that to me. He never really pushed that on me. He said something like that one time. I mean, if anything, I had a pretty good degree. Like I had a math degree from UC Santa Cruz. I graduated at the top of my class, and I was sort of doing some mathy computer stuff when my band Camper Van Beethoven took off. I mean, if anything, it sort of comes from me as like, if my band hadn't been taken off, I would have been working like at ground zero in Silicon Valley as the internet revolution came around. That probably was a more profitable career life timeline, but hey, I can't say I regret anything.
Well, yeah, and certainly you've had some influence on that world, even still, just in your advocacy for music, advocacy for artist rights, and pushing back a little bit on some of the advantage that can be taken of musicians. In this digital world that we live in. So you're still in there a little bit, just in a different form. So
yeah, as their nemesis, maybe.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think. You may be the first guest on the show I've had that's testified before Congress. So that's pretty cool.
Following in the tradition of what, like Frank Zappa and Pearl Jam and something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. At what point in your career did you start to see that there was the need for that kind of work to protect the artists?
Um, well, I just didn't. I just saw it as I thought people were just really misinformed about what was happening. That like how dramatically the revenues going to artists were falling, and then that the emerging like sort of system that was developing, like basically like streaming and such, how that was really not going to get us back to where we used to be. So, I mean, I just, it started out just kind of more informationally, but, there's so much pushback on that by a lot of tech people that it kind of pissed me off. And if like there hadn't have been pushback, I would have never then sort of gone, it's like this is like the classic like movie plot, right? A guy says something, you know, and that would have just been the end of it, except somebody just pissed them off, and so they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, like what's going on here?" You know what I mean? So I made it sort of a mission to sort of hold these folks accountable, and that's what I did. So.
Yeah, and still to a certain extent, out there advocating for that. I mean, what is it, because the world has evolved so much since those days initially, and not necessarily for the better when it comes to artists getting taken care of. So, what would you, as an artist out there, want more people, music fans in particular, to know about the world and how they can better support artists?
Well, first of all, if you can buy something, you should buy it because, one thing about even if streaming paid really well, the way streaming works is you get paid for your streams over the next 10 or 15 years. When you buy something, you're paying them for your work. You're paying for all the listens now, right? That helps. So if you can buy something, that's always better and stuff. Also, too, just in general, there's kind of a hierarchy of which streaming services pay the best. Out of the big three, Apple is the highest. Spotify's kind of in the middle, and YouTube's way, way down there. So if you can avoid listening to music on YouTube and instead even just going to Spotify or Apple, that is actually much better for artists.
Yeah, we have a saying on this show. It's give musicians your money. We're always encouraging people buy those concert tickets, but also buy that physical album, buy those T-shirts. Buy the things directly from the band whenever you can.
That's right, and that's actually true, and it's actually easier for us to sell those things nowadays. Like just like the conveniences of having like an iPad with a Stripe or a Square account on your iPad, so you can sell the stuff directly to people. We didn't used to have that available to us, so it's like use the other sort of technological innovations that are helpful to us, and do it that way.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. A lot of times it is a lot of doom and gloom about
Mhm.
what the internet has done, but there are some benefits.
Oh, absolutely. Like the promise of disintermediation, whereby you could sell something directly to people without an intermediary taking a cut, is generally very helpful for us. Like that part of the internet has been, I mean, in a lot of ways, that it's not like we haven't. In a lot of ways, we figured a lot of this out in the last 10 years, kind of how to deal with this. It's sort of like we don't really get paid for what we probably should be paid for, which is making recordings, because that's where we sort of put our life's work. Instead, we kind of get paid for sort of ancillary things, sort of around the margins and stuff like that. So we have kind of figured that out to a certain extent. And the other thing is too is like it didn't used to be that there were very few bands that continued to play like into their 50s and their 60s. And the other thing about the sort of the disintermediation of the internet is there's a lot of things. There's like podcasts, blogs, radio shows, YouTube channels, there's all kinds of, other ways to get your music out to people. And, that like weren't really available to a band like us, like if this was the 80s or the 70s or something like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think actually of probably my all-time favorite band and crew you guys run with somewhat often, Roger Klein and the Peacemakers. I came up hearing that one song on MTV, Banditos, and then just loving those guys so much. And it was only because of the internet and in the time of dial-up message boards, I was able to get to know that band further and come to meet a fan base and you know, they built their fan base that way, and again, to this day, they're out there doing it, independent
Mhm.
musicians and succeeding.
Yeah, that's what the internet's good for, is building a community, which they did. Is they built sort of a community around their band, and they built a lot of their festivals in Mexico and their other events, and things like that. They done a really good job with that.
Yeah. How did you get connected with those guys?
Just Roger was a fan of Cracker, and so invited us to one of those earlier Circus Mexicuses that they did, and sort of been connected to them ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a great crew for anyone out there to who loves music to check out and hang out with. I think that is one of the big benefits of the internet. Like you said, use that word community. You build that community up, and people can find each other across the way, and hopefully do positive things with that connection. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. So, all right. So, it's Cracker who's coming to town here. So, what's been going on with that band lately? What can people expect from the show? Is there anything, any new music coming up by chance, or anything you guys have been pulling out of the archives?
Um, I don't really know yet because I don't really planned on that show yet. I will tell you this though, that one of the sort of longtime locals favorites at the Acorn, Ann Harris, the violin fiddle player. She's been playing with us since we played a show with her there at the Acorn years ago, and sort of have kind of had her pretty much join the band full time. So because we have a fiddle player, we tend to play a little bit of the stuff from Camper Van Beethoven, because I had a fiddle player in that band. So we play a little bit from my first band. We tend to sort of lean a little more into sort of the sort of spooky folk stuff when we play with her. So I imagine that's where we'll be. I mean, we still play the hits, we still play the rock songs and stuff like that. But I imagine it'll lean a bit that way, right?
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, again, I grew up a '90s kid hearing the rock songs on the radio, but it was those deeper dives as I matured that I started to kind of see that. Again, you can see where you had those even country influences growing up, and all the things that I loved from my dad's vinyl collection growing up. Like you guys represent so much of that. You can see that influence all the way through there.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that's
Uh,
definitely in there.
Yeah, yeah. What about will we get any of your solo stuff on the show?
Probably not at that show. I'm probably will just be playing
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
Cracker show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you are out there doing some live shows promoting that?
yeah, I am. Yeah, I like this weekend. The album comes out this weekend, comes out this Friday. So I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, and then two shows in Atlanta. But they're kind of spread out across over the summer. I don't think we have any in your area yet. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. So are you still actively teaching these days?
I do, but I don't teach in the summer. So yes, I'm the senior lecturer in the music business at University of Georgia. So I'm still there.
Very nice. So what kind of lessons are you teaching in those classes?
I teach a number of classes. I teach a class that's sort of about the economics and the finance and the business, kind of the like business school type topics as applied to the music business. And then I teach a class about music publishing and licensing, which is a little more technical. And then I teach a class about public policy, like government lobbying and all of that stuff, and the music business.
Yeah. So how is it that you ended up speaking before Congress about artist rights when you did that?
Well, I was blogging and posting things on social media about all this stuff. I started a blog called the Tricordist, which actually became pretty influential in music public policy circles. And so, like, I was like one of the voices. And so Congress was having these hearings, and having hearings about what changes need to be made to the Copyright Act and stuff like that. So they had me come up and speak on one topic. I also submitted written testimony another time, but I don't know, man. I just sort of I got my voice out there, and people started listening to me, and it made its way to members of Congress, and they invited me up there to speak about this stuff.
That's excellent. Yeah. So let's go to songwriting a little bit. Tell me about, are you a rigid, I write at these days, these times kind of a person? Is it when the muse hits? What's your formula for when it comes to putting the words to the page?
I usually do it. I usually do my writing. Well, there's two parts to writing. Like there's this sort of just collecting little ideas. I tend to end just playing them on guitar or humming them into your voice memo on your phone. I usually do that in the morning when I'm drinking coffee. But actual songwriting, the kind of stuff where you're putting songs together, I actually usually do that like at a certain time of year. This year, it didn't end up working out, but usually I do that in May when school gets out and before summer touring starting. And I usually do a bunch of demos in May. I also do some in December. And I really don't try the rest of the year. I just build up the little snippets and ideas, song titles, a little chorus, a little lick here or there. And then I set aside like full days, often with like 5 or 6 in a row to do writing, just so your head gets really immersed in it.
Now, are there, do you set out specifically, I'm gonna write a David Lowery song, I'm gonna write a Cracker song, I'm gonna write a Camper song, or is
No,
it okay?
I just kind of write songs and then think about where they belong. Now, it's a little different. Like, it's a little different with the bands because often what I bring to the bands are things that aren't finished, because it's sort of like, why finish them if you're going to sort of take them to the band, let other people flesh it out and stuff like that. So a lot of times what I'm bringing to the bands are the things that I haven't really finished. Like I have a chorus and maybe an idea for like what the verse is like. And then I let the other people like sort of add their things or develop it or do stuff like that with it. If I write songs completely on my own, which happens a lot too, those tend to be my solo songs, right?
Yeah.
But not always. Sometimes I like write a song entirely 100% by myself and just put it on a Cracker record, put it on a Camper record.
Great. So let's go back to the solo album. What is it about this time in your life that made it feel it was right for sort of this autobiographical look back?
Well, because I'll be 65 in September. A lot of people are like, hey, I've been approached by a number of people like, do you want to maybe write an autobiography or write some kind of book about something? Because I write a lot anyway, because I was blogging and stuff. But what I began to realize is like, well, that's like a whole different skill. I mean, I can write blogs and I can write a chapter for a textbook or something like that, but to write a whole book and to keep people sort of engaged. I didn't know if I wanted to just like learn how to really do that and then just like write one book and then that's kind of it, like a whole new skill that I'd have to develop. And people spend years actually doing that. I was like, why don't I just do what I already know how to do, which is just write songs, and I'll just go through little vignettes, little moments in my life, little stories and stuff like that, and just see if I can make songs for a bunch of these. And so that's why I did it. So it hits the spot. Like people get to this age and they're like, yeah, I'm going to kind of sum up what I learned in my life, or tell people about things that happened to me, give people the background and stuff like that. But instead of really doing it in a book, I've done it in an album, although there's also actually a Substack that goes with each one of these songs too, which are going to start being released as well as this album comes out. So, yeah. So in a way, I did write a book anyway.
You did, yeah.
By writing 28 Substacks, because they're not short. Some of them aren't short, right? I mean, some of them are pretty short, but a lot of them are, I just wrote 10 pages on that song, or something, like it's crazy.
That's saying a lot in the age of the short attention span that we have now. So I commend you for that. And I assume that's going to be on your specific Substack that you already have going?
Yeah, David C. Lowery. Well, there's nothing there. There's one there right now.
Okay.
Holding the place, but it's David C. Lowery at Substack.
Excellent. Yeah, that'll be in the show notes for the listeners to check out for sure. So you have so many songs, referencing people in your life, whether it be family, bandmates, all of those things. Was there any nervousness at all about telling the stories of these people, or them hearing the story told about them?
Well, it's less the stories I tell about other people. I mean, some of the stuff I tell isn't like about myself, isn't really very flattering. So that's what sort of was like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I have to be honest. Am I ready to do this? There's a lot of the stuff I talk about with myself, isn't necessarily flattering what I portray. I mean, I think the funniest thing is my older sister. There's an entire song explaining my older sister. My older sister was born with CP. She's disabled to a certain extent. She had to have crutches and braces and stuff for a lot of her life. But she had more or less a normal life. She worked. She was married. She had a kid. She had more or less a normal life. And there's one song on there called "How Does Your Sister Roller Skate?" And I sent it to her. We communicate a lot through iPad and text and stuff like that. It's easier for her. And so I sent it to her iPad. I sent the mix of the song to her, and she didn't know anything about this. I just dropped it into iMessage and, to see what she said. And I just said, hey, I wrote a song about you, right? And so there was a long enough period of time that went by for her to listen to the song, and then some. And she didn't say anything. And then after like about an hour, she just writes back and goes, pretty good. Like, I tell her whole story, and that's her reaction, is like, pretty good. Like, this is great. Thank you. Or anything. She's like, pretty good. So that wasn't really the reaction I was expecting, but that's kind of my sister, so it's pretty funny, right?
I guess in some ways that could be a relief, because it's not a bad response, but also, you look for a little more there.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about, again, some of these tracks have been out in other forms for a while, but you're putting this package together. I imagine you're going through a process of doing some reviewing and re-listening and that. Did you learn anything about yourself or your own story through that process?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them are like, sort of become these revelations. There's a song called Piney Woods, which ends the first CD, which is about, it starts to just sort of be about a story about me driving across country when I moved from California to Virginia, but I stopped and visit my grandmother in Arkansas. And there's just kind of tragedy at the heart of my dad's family. It's the murder suicide of his brother, my uncle, and so that song didn't start out as about that. It gets sort of mentioned, but it becomes sort of the explanation, and sort of an exploration of sort of how that sort of just caused sort of this sort of multi-generational trauma through my dad's family and shaped everybody's life and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's why my grandparents just like picked my dad. That's why my dad went in the Air Force. That's why my grandparents just picked up and started being like itinerant farm workers in California, right? Like so much of everything that happened after, like with my family after that, and the family history and stuff like that, was kind of the result of sort of this tragic event, and it just kind of shapes everything for a couple of generations and such. So, and I never really put that together until I started writing that song, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of the things there. And there were many little pieces like that. That, of course, is the most sort of profound one in all of those songs. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience for me. I won't say it wasn't hard at times, and actually probably even harder than doing the album has been writing these sort of little substacks explaining the background on each one of these songs. Because, you know, in the lyrics and stuff, you're a little more ambiguous, a little more vague, and you're kind of you have to summarize things. But in the substacks that I write, you know, you really kind of got to go into detail, and you know, some of that's pretty wrenching to go into. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you see this project carrying on a life beyond this release, continuing to dive into those stories either through the Substack or through future music?
I probably more or less done with the autobiographical stuff, but because of the sort of the odd sort of narrative of these songs, where these songs, a lot of times these songs don't really have choruses because there's so much to explain. They have choruses, but the choruses don't like repeat. There's another section of music, a different melody and stuff that comes in, but it's as if there's a bunch of, you know, just really verse heavy, very story heavy. I've kind of got a little taste for writing that way right now. And so the stuff that I'm sort of dabbling with so far sounds more like that, less, you know, rock songs with a verse chorus type thing. It's just different. It just kind of affected my songwriting style, but I don't think it'll necessarily be autobiographical. Again, I think I've kind of done that.
Yeah, it's almost like you've kind of come full circle. You know, you're moving towards a little bit of an American roots type of, if not necessarily a style, certainly philosophy, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. A lot of this album too. I mean, I know there's some darkness in it, and there's some tragedies in it and stuff like that. But you know, a lot of this album is actually kind of sweet. Whereas, you know, Cracker had sort of a sardonic edge a lot of times, as, you know, could be kind of cynical and harsh and stuff like that.
Hey, that's
A
what
lot of
spoke to
this album,
teenage Justin right there. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. And there's a time and there's a place for that. But a lot of this album is like really earnest and sweet, and also kind of small C conservative, in that it's about like really sort of basic things like, you know, your family, you know, what it means to be a parent, you know, what it means to be a son, a good son, you know, family, like those kind of things and stuff like that. It's all that stuff. And partly because I was kind of making a joke about this to the record label. I go, yeah, it's kind of my all-American sort of, you know, red, white, and blue kind of, you know, boy record or something like that. They're like, that's what the vinyl should be, red, white, and blue. So the vinyl it's 3 discs, it's red, white, and blue. So
I saw that today when I was looking at the promotional package. It's pretty awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a great package worth checking out. I'm always a proponent of getting those physical copies because you get those cool styles like that. And I was listening to the Drive By Truckers re-release of one of their albums on vinyl, and you get the great booklet, and there's just so much to sit there and absorb in a physical format, more than just even just putting on headphones.
Yeah, I mean, the booklet is huge. I mean, it's got all the lyrics in it. It doesn't have the stuff that's in the Substack because that's probably a book in itself. But and the pictures are so big. I always forget that about vinyl versus CDs. It's like you can really look at the pictures. You can like really look at the detail in the pictures because I have some historical family photos and stuff like that in there and stuff like that. You can really look and see every detail, which is fun
Yeah,
with
definitely.
with vinyl.
Yeah. Are your parents still around or?
No, they passed away. It's one of the songs on the record.
Oh,
It's a little vague, but that's what that's about. Is my father passed away about 15 years ago. My mother passed away about 7 years ago.
okay.
But they lived long lives. My father, and my mother, they lived into their 80s. Um, yeah,
Got to see their son with a lot of success, so they had to make him
that's
proud.
that's right. That's true. They got to go to you know the ceremonies when I got my gold and platinum records and go to things like that. Go to we didn't go to the Grammys. Which one did we go to? Might have been MTV Music Awards. I can't remember. I took him to one of them.
That's excellent. And that points to, I mean, you've achieved all of these, sort of markers of success, but what is it for you? What for David? Kind of every day. What is the thing that you're aiming for? What makes success for today? For as you move forward in your world, musically, creatively.
If you're talking about music, it's like I I want my songs to still appeal to me now. And not every song can do that. But I have a lot of songs that I wrote over the 30 or 40 years that I can, bring up and play and go, yeah, I'm still glad I wrote that song. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily about like the commercial success or anything or a song being popular or other people liking it. To me, it's more like when I do hear one of the older songs and it still sounds good and it still seems like it held up, like then I feel like, okay, this song will carry on. I sort of accomplished something. I created something that I think stands the test of time. And that's the most important thing to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot of musicians that listen to this show as well, and certainly many of them are just getting started in their careers, or they're
Mhm.
much earlier on. Is there anything that you could pass on to them as someone that's reached the level that you had?
Yeah, quantity is its own form of quality in when it comes to songwriting. So this is what I mean by this. If you can get into a groove where you write a lot of songs, that's probably the best. Write a lot of songs and just kind of demo them really loosely, right? And just to do as many as possible rather than like going, oh, I've got this idea for a song and I'm going to keep working on it and make it great because I know this can be a great song. You shouldn't do that. That's the wrong instinct for songwriting. You will eventually do that just sort of by accident. Like a song will come back that didn't work and you'll refine it a little more. Then you'll get tired of it and let it go away. You should just do as many small ideas as you can. And that's really the best way to be happy writing music and building your craft and having some success. It's just like it's a volume game. It's like write as much as you can. And I actually always recommend writing with other people because you only need a little snippet, because somebody else you write with probably has a few snippets, and you can kind of like mash them together and see if they work and turn into bigger songs and stuff like that. So also co-writing, I highly recommend just writing with other people.
Oh
Although I
yeah.
couldn't do this album. I could not do this album this way. That's why it was kind of hard. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's something, I'm not a musician, but I create in other aspects, and there's something so fulfilling about collaboration and just making that connection creatively with other, other people. So.
Right. You don't have to, yeah, the great thing is you don't have to carry all the weight. You'd be like, well, all I got is this right now. What do you have? What do you think? Right. And then they can show you something that they've got that they don't know what to do with. And you go, oh, wait, what if we did this with it? And, it's important.
Yeah, having other minds in there. And I love that philosophy, too, of just doing a lot, because in my own writing, I have this philosophy. I call it, the saying is, you've got to dig through the dirt to get to the treasure. And you're just going to churn out sometimes a lot of garbage, but eventually you'll uncover that nugget that really is something,
That's right. That's right. That's exactly this. I think that's the same philosophy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get up in the morning and just come up with a couple of guitar snippets or a little melody, or think of some lyric idea and write it down, like even one sentence, and that's just like a ton of those little tiny pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we wind down here, listen, David, I'm excited that you came on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time. People check out the links for the solo release. And then Cracker will be in town in June. So definitely come out and check out that show. Hopefully, David, I can see you out there and have a good old time at the rock show.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Take care. Okay.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Anywhere the Needle Drops from Red Chuck Productions. Keep up on new episodes of this show, our live events and various creations and other happenings over at redchuckproductions.com, or by following us on social media at Red Chuck Productions. Special thanks to Hero Jr. for our theme music. You can check them out over at herojuniormusic.com. That is Hero, Hero, Junior, JR, music.com. A big shout out to Paul Clemson and Theory One Productions for handling sound duties and so much more. Check out their magic over at theory1productions.com. And a big thank you to Earthworks Audio for outfitting the Red Chuck studio. See their microphones and their other products over at earthworksaudio.com. Be sure to support all of our guests by visiting their websites, social media, clicking that subscribe button, seeing them live, and checking out their merch stores. Give musicians and artists your money. We'll be back with the next episode. Until then, thank you for your time. Here's to life.